Greetings from Hawaii. I'm Trip, and welcome to the Hammer of Wrath. This week, you and I are going to paint a very big space wolf. Let's go. Thanks for joining me in the studio for what should have been the final video in the Summer of the Wolf series, but a bunch of life happened. This week, we are going to paint true-scale Thunderwolf Cavalry. But first, I want to talk very briefly about horses, or more specifically, horses in Japan. Now, much like any other nation, horses are entwined deeply in Japan's history, and before modernization and industrialization were a big part of warfare and daily life in Japan. It is common to see horses depicted in woodblock prints used in everyday life and warfare. But in modern Japan, it's a bit of a different story. With the growth of massive urban centers like Tokyo and Osaka, of course, horses sort of went by the wayside and were replaced by cars and trains. If you want to learn how to ride a horse, you'll have to take a ride well outside the city center, often 2 hours, into the surrounding countryside and mountains in order to find a horse ranch that gives lessons. But when you do so, not only will you find stables that give traditional English or Western saddle riding lessons, you can also find schools that teach you horseback archery and other ancient Japanese warrior skills. And speaking about mounted warfare, let's talk about Thunderwolf Cavalry. Now, strangely, in the massive line refresh that the Space Wolves enjoyed this summer, the Thunderwolf Cavalry were conspicuously absent. So, wanting to create some Thunderwolf Cavalry, but not wanting to use the old and outdated and underscaled existing Firstborn models, trolling the internet for suitable replacement models, I discovered some absolutely exceptional work from the artist Cyberbrush 3D. So let me show you how I printed and painted true-scale Thunderwolf Cavalry. As I was working my way through the Summer of the Wolf, I was constantly trolling the internets for new bits and came across this. An artist named Cyberbrush 3D who has an exceptional array of Space Wolf-themed bits. There are power packs, swords, axes, banners, pauldrons, and these. True-scale Thunderwolf Cavalry. I mean, look at this. It's a fantastic dynamic pose. The Space Marine on top is Primaris scale, and there are 5 poses altogether, including ones with cyber limbs like the old models used to have, and this crazy bastard whose wolf has been taken down, but he's leaping off the saddle to continue his attack. Now, the models come in pre-supported and unsupported formats. I reached out to Cyberbrush, let them know that I wanted to make a video featuring their content, and they were generous enough to send me the files for free. So I printed them on my Anycubic Photon Mono 4K resin printer using Soraya Tech navy gray resin, and also attached a few official Games Workshop parts. Now, I prime all of my models, whether they're plastic or resin, using Viaho polyurethane primer. It goes on through the airbrush with a really smooth matte finish. And once we've got our black primer down, we're going to go ahead and do a zenithal. This is going to help define the shapes of the model, and it makes the colors that will go on top of this a little brighter and more saturated. Now, when you're painting something from nature, you want to look at reference. I did a quick look on Google image search and decided that I wanted to do a more red-brown wolf, almost like a amber tones. So we'll start here with bone white from Viaho underneath. We looked at our reference. The wolves are lighter in the underbelly. And then here, I'm going to take an Army Painter paint. This is Fur Brown from the Fanatic Paint Range reformulation. It is a very warm reddish brown, and we'll just spray that from the top down. And because it's over a white zenithal, we're getting a really bright saturated color. And then lastly, I'm going to take Burnt Umber from Viaho. Wolves often have this really dark stripe right along the dorsal ridge or the spine ridge, so we'll go ahead and apply that with the airbrush as well. And once we have our gradients laid in, we're going to apply Agrax Earthshade mixed 1-to-1 with Lamian Medium. That's going to help it flow more evenly over the model. And we're just going to brush that over all of the fur, getting into our recesses and creating that definition. Lastly, I'm going to take contrast wildwood and apply that just along the very center ridge to get that final definition in the darkness on the back. And then once all the washes are dry, we're going to go ahead and dry brush the model using bone white on the underside and then back to fur brown on the sides. That's going to bring up all of our high points and ridges. With that set, we're going to move on to the leathers. Now here, I'm using Beastie Brown from Vallejo. It's a cooler brown. It almost has a greenish tinge to it, but it looks really good when you put Agrax Earthshade over top. So I'll just be careful here as I paint in all the leather straps and the saddle. We're using Balthazar Gold on all of our bronze colors. This is a theme through all my Space Wolves. There's no true golds. They're all sort of bronzy or patinaed, and you'll see later on that we're going to shade that with something unique. We'll work our way through the model doing the silvers with lead belcher, and then we're going to do the eyes here. You'll look, I sort of paint outside the lines, so to speak, but that's okay. We can take some burnt umber and touch that up again later. Here I'm using pink and brown to paint the gums, and then I'll use Reichland Flesh Shade to shade those in, and then very carefully taking our 000 brush and painting in our pupils. And then lastly, we'll get to his nose here, and we'll make sure we painted all of the sides of that. And then we'll take dark gray from the Army Painter and then just bring out the edge highlights and texture on the nose. With the details in the face done, we're going to work our way around the model, applying Agrax Earthshade. Here I'm applying it to the runes and fangs that are ornamentation, as well as putting it on all the leather straps. And then you'll see here we've put a bunch on the saddle, but that's okay. We're actually going to push that around so it's not pooling in any one place. Now, again, that patina, we're actually shading this with a Thonian camo shade. That's a green, like a matte or army green shade. You put that on, and what that does is age down the copper and the bronzes, make them look patinaed. And once that's dry, we'll go through with, this is Canoptic Alloy, just sort of bringing out the highlights and edges. Now, being careful with the rider here, I'm using a Vallejo paint. This is Model Color Gray Blue, and we'll put that down as a base coat. And then we're going to use Contrast Space Wolves Gray. This is 1 part contrast paint to 2 parts medium. You'll see that it flows really evenly across the model, fills in those recesses, but leaves the high points. And then we're going to go through and using a very fine brush, we're going to highlight the top edges of all of these shapes with Fenrisian Gray. This is going to round that out. Now, because the torso is separate, we can kind of do this with the airbrush really quickly. Shadow gray from underneath, that lighter gray, Fenrisian gray from over top, and then again, that same formula, 1 part contrast, 2 parts contrast medium, and you'll see that it flows over the model, goes right into the recesses, pulls away from the high spots. It's actually really great. Now you'll notice here when I glue the torso on that there's something different. I dropped the model and it shattered his right arm and the shield off the left, so I had to go ahead and reattach those. Unfortunately, the axe was shattered, and because I was pressed for time to get the video done, I didn't want to print a new one, so I used another axe that I had on hand. You'll see that in a minute. Now we do a pink underneath our yellows here, because as you see, when we airbrush that yellow on top, the pink turns into this really rich sort of orange gradient shadow value. And once we've got our yellows down, we'll go ahead and use Fenrisian Gray to get the edge of those pauldrons finished up and ready to put on. Once we put our squad markings and our decals on, we'll use some super glue gel type in order to secure the plastic pauldrons to the resin arms. The thing I'm really excited about this is the scale of the model, right? Thunderwolf Cavalry are such a cool unit, but honestly, I was kind of shocked that they didn't get a refresh over the summer with all the other really great Space Wolves units, and I hate to hurt anybody's feelings, but the old models, especially when put up against a Primaris force, like if the rest of your force is all the new models and you bring the old Firstborn scale Thunderwolf Cavalry, they look ridiculous. They look like children riding ponies. It just doesn't work, and I've seen a lot of dedicated hobbyists try and use the old wolves, but then put new Primaris bodies on them, and it just looks like a man trying to ride a really big dog, and it doesn't work. So I absolutely love the massive scale of the wolves in Cyberbrush's work here. Cyberbrush also has an excellent selection of Viking style heads. This one has a braided mohawk, a braided beard, and has this great screaming expression on his face. We'll go through and use Agrax Earthshade to shade down the bones and trophies on the shield, the leather haft of the axe, and then again a Thonian camo shade to patina down all of our bronze colors. Once those are all set, we're just going to go through and hit a couple highlights. We're going to bring the high points back out on the bones and trophies. And then again, we'll use Canoptic Alloy to bring out the highlights on the bronzes on the shield for the last few details. Now, with the model done, we need a base. I didn't buy the kit, of course, but we still need 60mm bases. Fortunately, I was just able to print those in plastic on my FDM printer, and this is a base topper from Greytide Studios. It's part of their Primal Hounds collection. I use these on all of my Space Wolves. Once we've got that done, we need to attach the model to the base. Now, the bottom of the model, these rocks are a little uneven the way they printed, and the base itself has a lot of nooks and crannies, and we could use super glue gel type to try and secure these, but with gaps this big, we're going to use our fancy new no-drip hot glue gun. We'll apply a generous amount there, press them together, and secure it to finish the model. Well, there you have it. Massive true-scale Thunderwolves charging headfirst into battle, mounted by Primaris scale Space Wolves. A special thanks to Cyberbrush 3D for generously supplying the models for this project, and thanks to you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. It was my genuine pleasure to make and share it with you. If you'd like to help the channel, like, comment, and subscribe. Help drive us to the front page of YouTube and grow our audience as we approach 15,000 subscribers. Or if you'd like to support the channel in other ways, check out the link in the description below and join our Patreon. Joining at any level grants you access to our private Discord server where like-minded hobbyists help each other out every day with honest and kind feedback, and can get sneak previews of upcoming projects like this true-scale Thunderwolf Cavalry as it was in progress. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one.